Okay, it is now 6:02. We are going to go ahead and get started. Good evening. Thank you all for your time this evening. We appreciate your interest in and your attendance of the City of Rock Hill Virtual Stormwater Master Plan presentation. I would like to acknowledge the Mayor, Edward Mahan, the City Administrator Garrett Schlett, Assistant City Administrator Lisa Perrin, the Aldermen and Alderwomen of the City of Rock Hill, Ed Johnson, Tina Wiley, Jennifer Davis, Sabrina Westfall, Robert Wider, and Jeffrey Took, as well as the residents of Rock Hill who have worked with us throughout the process to make sure we had collected relevant information to prepare the Stormwater Master Plan. My name is Laura Mwirigi, and I'm with Lockmiller Group, and I serve as the project manager. My colleague, Alison Mannion, will be leading the better half of this presentation. And as the lead project engineer, you have probably met her in the field during the data collection phase. We will go ahead and review the presentation overview. The presentation will be completed in 3 sections, which include defining the Stormwater Master Plan, what it is not, and what it is for. What's the purpose? Secondly, we'll review the Stormwater Master Plan process. This will review the data gathering and analysis methodology used to develop the Stormwater Master Plan. Thirdly, we will go through the draft project recommendations. This will include a graphical and data presentation of the proposed projects to address stormwater concerns for the City of Rock Hill. Before we proceed, I would like us to go through some ground rules for using the Zoom platform. You will notice that you are in view mode. What this means is that though you can see and hear us, we cannot see and hear you. This format allows for us to stay within the agenda and respect everybody's time. However, we do want to hear from you. Therefore, we have provided an option. If you scroll down, you will see Q&A ribbon, a ribbon for using the Zoom platform, and this includes a Q&A section which you should use to type in questions which we can then answer. Please do not use the chat option. If you use the chat option, we will not be able to see and address those questions. At the end of every section, we will take some time to pause and answer the questions that have been posed by the community. So with that, we will move on to the next part of our presentation. What is a Stormwater Master Plan? So a Stormwater Master Plan details the procedures used to evaluate the conditions of the drainage infrastructure. This includes the built system, which is composed of the piped sewer networks, basins, inlets, as well as natural conveyance systems such as ditches and creeks. Then, using a structured stormwater problem identification process, we identify deficiencies in the drainage system, and then we have a systematic approach on how we are going to address issues and present those solutions. The next slide, we will go through what are the main components of a Stormwater Master Plan. So in the process of completing a Stormwater Master Plan, we address the key items used to develop the plan. This includes 1, we have to assess and identify the municipal MS4. MS4 stands for Municipal Separate System. This means that the City of Rock Hill shares permit responsibilities with other communities around them. This is because the City of the City of Rock Hill is a co-permittee with MSD. So MSD holds the permit from the Department of Natural Resources, which regulates MSD to ensure there is water, the water that is discharged from their stormwater system meets water quality standards. In order for MSD to meet those standards, then there are some measures which they must implement, and the City of Rock Hill, together with other communities that share the MSD stormwater system, must help MSD to make sure that they meet those conditions. My colleague Alison will go through some of those measures that are implemented by the city, and these requirements that the city of Rock Hill must meet in order to be a core permittee with MSD together with the other communities. The next thing is that we have to appraise the severity of impact from the stormwater runoff. Severity means that you have to be able to measure what kind of risk it has to, for example, the infrastructure, life, as well as property. So stormwater runoff will have adverse impacts, negative impacts on property, infrastructure such as road. It may cause down service systems. So the more severity runoff has to a particular area, then that makes it a candidate of a problem to be identified and addressed in the Stormwater Master Plan. Thirdly, the Stormwater Master Plan must actually propose mitigation measures to deal with these issues. And then over a planning period, which may vary depending on the on budgetary issues or funding availability, size of the projects, these projects are prioritized and laid out in a capital improvement plan. Then over the planning period, you must address the age of the infrastructure. Depending on when the infrastructure, for example, was built, you have to address the physical condition of the infrastructure itself, and then also system capacity. Is the system large enough to be able to convey stormwater, or do improvements need to be made to add capacity to the system? Then we also must address community growth. Is the community growing? Are we adding more impervious area to the community that results in additional stormwater runoff? And then finally, we have to identify, and we'll go through this in a later slide. So as we move on to the next slide, we will go through the elements of the Stormwater Master Plan and summarize them really quickly. One, first and foremost, public safety. Public safety is key to everything. Risk to life and property, and most importantly, risk to life is the first item that is reviewed anytime any infrastructure project is graded or prioritized. If it causes any risk to even one life, then that becomes a high priority project. Second, accessibility. This usually deals with accessibility to, example, emergency services such as hospitals, or if there is some evacuation route that might be blocked because of a down tree or flooding on a street, or even access for police vehicles or emergency vehicles to be able to go to homes and be able to provide services to the residents. School buses as well. For example, if you are within a school bus route, but the road is often flooded during floods, and that becomes that needs to. Then you also have to address issues that are caused, for example, by developments that might be even public projects that have been developed, and then they might have an impact to the rest of the community. In that case, any impact that is caused by that public development, road, or any other public infrastructure would be considered in the Stormwater Master Plan. Another item is if there is any activity or development upstream that is causing problems downstream. So of course, water flows uphill down here. And if there are issues upstream that are causing downstream issues, then those would be considered issues that need to be considered in the Stormwater Master Plan. Another very important fact is that if there are issues, for example, that a property owner could not complete by themselves, mostly because they involve multiple property owners. So for example, if there is a large stretch of creek that is crossing through multiple properties, or you have a pipe, for example, that is running through and requires easement from multiple properties, it is difficult for one homeowner to go and fix a section of pipe when in actuality they need to be able to fix the entire line. So that will be addressed in the Stormwater Master Plan. Next, we will address why a stormwater master plan is needed. So, as noted before, it helps us identify the risk that stormwater presents to life, property, and the environment. And then you're able to put together a plan to be able to mitigate this risk. So it moves us from being constantly identifying or complaining about the issues every time it rains or every time there's a flood, to actually having a plan that can be implemented to have solutions. This is very important, especially when it comes to funding. Most funding, whether they're local, state, or federal, will require some kind of document to be submitted in order to be eligible for funding. We can start, for example, with something as a local funding that's available through MSD, OMCI funding. OMCI funding, for example, was used to fund preparation of this stormwater master plan. But it is a cost-sharing program that allows for the city to be able to fix some of the stormwater issues. And then they have money provided by MSD on a 50-50 kind sharing of the cost of the project. So through this project, MSD currently levies about, the numbers are there, $0.0620 dollars. So it's about 0.62 cents for residential, and it varies depending on the kind of development you have. And then at the end of every year, you have a bank where this money is collected, and the city can go and use these funds to fix some of the stormwater issues. Now, one thing I did want to note is that coming next year, MSD is proposing a stormwater rate proposal. In April of 2024, MSD is going out and asking for to be able to have a proposal throughout its entire district. Right now, only parts of the district have the OMCI plan going on, and it has noted that they have about $700 million of projects identified, but they only have $19 million in the pot. So MSD is trying to raise more money to be able to address stormwater issues. So next year, when that proposal goes through, the city of Rock Hill is able to participate in this program. However, any money that has been collected from the residents of the city of Rock Hill up to 2024 will remain in the pot for the city of Rock Hill to use. And any further additional funding that MSD gets from the rest of the district is actually divided into 4 sections. 50% of that money will go to district-wide capital projects. Now, it is important to note that when we create the stormwater master plan, the projects that are identified here will be submitted to MSD, and they will use MSD benefit cost analysis, and MSD will have those projects included in their program. However, they are not actually listed for funding yet, but they will have them available. So those will be some of the projects. MSD will go through a process to decide which projects get funded by 50% of that money that is collected. Then 30% of that money will go to municipal grants. It's grant. That means it's not a loan. It's grant money that's provided to the municipalities to be able to address their stormwater needs. So once you have identified and have a stormwater master plan that lists projects and ways to identify to mitigate the stormwater issues, then you have a way to be able to, a mechanism to be able to apply for these grants. And then 10% is used for environmental justice areas, which is not quite applicable to the city of Rock Hill. However, there's 10% that is also available for regional issues. And since the city of Rock Hill drains to Deer Creek, and Deer Creek is a creek that affects the region of the greater region beyond the city of Rock Hill, there is a possibility of being able to get additional funding from there. So that is just a quick summary of what will be going on in April when the new stormwater proposal comes from MSD. However, in addition to OMCI funding, local MCI funding. There's additional funding that's available from the Department of Natural Resources, SRF funding through the state, that is State Revolving Fund, and other funding opportunities, for example, that may have come up, for example, previously with the ARPA funding that came from the federal government. So with that, I will take a pause and see if anyone has any general questions about what a stormwater master plan is.
There have been no questions yet, Laura. Just a reminder to everyone, if you have a question, you can type it in the Q&A box and we'll answer it either via chat or we have a few question slides throughout the presentation.
Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Laura. So to go over the entire stormwater master plan process. So for the city of Rock Hill, they issued a request for proposals, which Lockmuir put together a proposal and was awarded and was given a notice to proceed. Like Laura said, we did use OMCI funding for the completion of the stormwater master plan. And so we also had to get approval from MSD. And then we could actually get started with the stormwater master plan and the actual steps. So the first step of the stormwater master plan is the data collection and mapping. And I am going to go into each of these more in depth in the next few slides. The next is problem identification when we're actually out in the field talking to you guys. And then we took that data back and did a stormwater needs assessment. So came up with ideas and analyzed the data that was collected. And now we are in the draft recommendations phase. So the presentation to you all tonight, we did present to the city council last week. And we'll take any feedback that you guys have or the city officials have and incorporate any of that. And we will then issue the final report. And then we will start looking for some funding to see if we can find any to be able to complete some of these jobs, as well as issuing the stormwater master plan to MSD so that they can incorporate the projects as well into their kind of master list. So like I said, the first step of the stormwater master plan was data collection and mapping. So we created an online web map that we had access to on iPads. So if you saw us out in the field, we had iPads on our hand. We were looking at this map that is going to be referenced in all of our exhibits that we show tonight, and stores all the information. So if any of you did send in photos or any comments, but if we spoke to you guys out in the field, all of that is stored in this web map. But before before we were actually out in the field doing the data collection part, we looked at the city holistically, and so there's really three main creeks that run through the city. There's Deer Creek, Rock Hill Creek, and Worsen Woods Creek. And Rock Hill Creek and Worsen Woods Creek both eventually do flow to Deer Creek, but in the interest of kind of dividing the city up, those were the three kind of main watersheds we divided the city up. And those are represented by each of these colors. So the green being the Rock Hill Creek watershed, the orange being Worsen Woods Creek watershed, and the blue being Deer Creek watershed. And within those watersheds, we actually subdivided those further into sub-watersheds to help us determine capacities of the existing system. And we also looked at historical data, any MSD data that they were able to share with us, complaint history from property owners. We sat down with city officials and discussed with them where some known areas of concern were with stormwater. The city of Rock Hill does have a decent amount of floodplain and floodway within the city, which is shown kind of the red stripe and the blue. The blue is the 100-year floodplain, and the red stripe is the floodway. And so there are quite a few areas of in or near the floodplain throughout the city. So we analyze that and use that as a consideration as well. And then we came up with a list from all of that data, a list of what we called target properties. So these were the properties that we did go out in the field and inspect that area in the field or speak with a property owner. And like I said, we looked at complaint data. We sat down and discussed with city officials, and we looked at the FEMA floodplain mapping for the city. And so all these properties in green were our list of target properties, and that did a couple popped up while we were out in the field and throughout this process. So it was, you know, a little bit of an evolving list, and even after this meeting, there could be some additional information that comes to light. And as I was saying, we collected all of this in an online map, which, okay. You can see right here. So this, like I said, this was just the map where we collected all of the data. We had it on the iPads, and had MSD sewers brought in to this map, parcel information, homeowner information, and this is where we collected our data points out in the field. That was just so you guys could get a little bit more information about what we were doing out there. And so then we moved on to the problem identification phase. So actually going out into the field and seeing what issues were occurring. And so each of these colored circles is a data point that was collected out in the field. And it's zoomed out so we can see the entire city, so it's hard to see. There's a lot of overlapping points, but the colors correspond with the issues we saw out in the city. So some of those problems were backyard flooding, basement backups, channel ditch erosion, driveway or private roadway or parking lot flooding, main structure, so like house flooding, just any general other property damage that was occurring due to stormwater, public roadway flooding, sinkholes, and storm system deterioration. And we were taking photos that are attached to these data points as well, and collecting just any applicable information while we were out in the field. And some homeowners actually were able to send in some photos as well, which was very helpful. And we're still interested in any photos or anything anybody has to share. Photos, videos, anything that, you know, can help us understand different issues occurring in the city. So a few examples of the problems we saw throughout the city of Rock Hill. There was some roadway flooding, not a ton of roadway flooding, definitely better off than a lot of cities in the area, but there is some roadway flooding occurring. There are a few instances of main structure building flooding, so people's actual houses getting flooded, that primarily along De Pere, and then in the industrial area along Manchester, there was some main structure building flooding occurring as well. Was also quite a bit of driveway and private roadway flooding. And again, a lot of that, the parking lots that were being flooded, a lot of that was along Manchester, specifically along Deer Creek, where Deer Creek crosses Manchester. The city of Rock Hill does have quite a few sinkholes that are causing issues. So sinkholes aren't necessarily inherently a huge problem, but what they either MSD inherited or many years ago MSD designed. I'm not sure which situation this is, but there are storm systems. So inlets go connect into storm sewers, and these systems of these networks of storm sewers that actually end at sinkholes. And so the water going into with the kind of the idea that, well, the water will go into the sinkhole, the groundwater will be replenished over time. And while that kind of, you know, works a little bit, a lot of the rain events we're seeing these days, especially with how developed Rock Hill is now, that is those sinkholes are just not big enough to take in that amount of water. And so what we're seeing is those systems are then backing up and flooding into people's backyards and causing some issues. And we also saw quite a bit of backyard flooding. And one thing that I do want to point out, like, I know when it floods, I get a little pond in my backyard with a good enough storm. Our concern as far as the stormwater master plan is concerned are issues that are in both of these photos, there's water flowing from one property to another onto the next. So this isn't an issue that a single homeowner can tackle themselves. This is, as Laura was stating earlier, an issue that would involve multiple homeowners. And if, like putting a sewer back here, easements from multiple properties. Same with this. This was actually a snip of a video that a homeowner sent of water flowing, through many backyards. And the last and one of the biggest issues we saw throughout the city was stream bank erosion. There were lots of instances of stream bank erosion. So when we were out in the field and collecting those data points, one thing we collected, like I said, the type of issue, where it was located in the city, any other, we took, photos or collected photos or any other data that was important. We also gave that issue a severity ranking of 5 to a 1, with a 5 being very severe. This could cause a significant property damage or potentially harm to people's lives, etc., down to 1 being kind of, minor backyard flooding. And so this map right here, these two maps show the data in slightly different ways. So this map on the left is what we call a heat map, and it indicates the severity of the problem. So the more yellow the area, the more dense issues, more severe were the issues that we saw. So as you can see from this, kind of the two areas of greatest concern throughout the city were along De Pere, and then in the industrial area along Manchester Road over to the west of the city. And this map on the right indicates number of problems. So the bigger the circle, the more problems were in that area, but it doesn't necessarily take into consideration the severity, which the exhibit on the left does indicate. So there's just two ways of showing the data that was collected out in the field and how it can be utilized. And then the yellow outlines show where our recommended projects are located throughout the city, which we will get to here shortly. So at this time, I can take another pause for questions. I don't see any questions. So if there aren't at this time, I can move on. And again, if you have a question, type it in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we can get this answered.
Alison, there is a question that came up. It says, what does no color marking mean in terms of severity?
So I know it's kind of probably hard to read. It's it means there's not a high concentration of severe issues in an area. So the darker the issue, the more concentration of severe issues, if that makes sense. And so for the capital improvement projects, things that were and are considered are the number of homeowners a project would benefit. Is this project going to benefit like an entire street, or one house, or maybe one or two houses? The benefit to cost ratio. So again, that takes into MSD has the kind of a ranking system where they take the cost of a project and also other factors such as number of homeowners that that project will impact, and safety, risk to property, severity of the issue, major roadway accessibility. And the stormwater projects are divided up into 3 categories. So improvement to storm sewer collection system, storage, and stream bank stabilization. And for the storm sewer collection system, so when I keep using the word inlet, and that is here's a photo of an inlet right here. And that is either those can be 1, 2, 3, or 4-sided inlet. So this actually is a 4-sided inlet, so water can go in on 4 sides. They can also be graded flush with the ground, and those allow water into the storm sewer system. There's also the other parts of the storm sewer system are the pipes, and the purpose of the storm sewer systems are to convey the storm water and eventually to one of the, like, Deer Creek, Worson Woods Creek, or Rock Hill Creek, as I discussed earlier. And types of projects that are included in storm sewer collection systems are for areas that had pipes that are undersized. So we did capacity analysis and analyze the size of the sewers compared to the amount of stormwater going to those areas, and if the sewer is big enough. Also, is the storm sewer long enough? Does it need to be extended? Or do inlets need to be added or removed and replaced? The next type of project is storage projects, and those include above ground, so kind of like a detention basin, and it looks like a little pond. It can be permanently store water, kind of more of a pond, or it can drain off. And the other type are the below ground storage options, and those are actually underneath the street, or underneath an area where you won't even actually be able to see them. Here's a photo of one being constructed. It's basically just a large, there's different technologies out there, but basically it just stores water under the ground in a large pipe or a large area to store water, and then help attenuate the flow during those high intensity, short duration storms, and then release that storm water back into the system. And when there is capacity. And the last type of project are stream bank stabilization. And those are to stabilize the creek banks that are eroding, and or walls that are falling, and those include building of concrete walls. Those include gaping baskets. Those include the most traditional way of doing that is rock lining, and where you cut the creek bank back and you size the rock or the riprap to go there based on the velocity of the water, and you plant some natural plants or do some live staking of certain types of trees to help stabilize and really lock that creek bank in and keep it from eroding. And I'm about to kind of go through all the projects right now. I do want to emphasize that this is a draft plan of the Stormwater Master Plan. These are not final projects. These are not all of the projects that are going to be included. There can be more that are added after this time. And also some of these projects that we are discussing are going to be fairly expensive and be a little bit more long term. We will have to find some kind of funding. Riprap is are rocks that help. They're different size rocks to help stabilize the creek bank, and to help determine costs in these cost estimates, MSD pay items were used, as this is MSD infrastructure. So with that, project number 1, Oak Avenue Storm Sewer. So there is water that's flowing down from Oak Leaf Drive on into the O'Day Avenue. And our recommendation here is to add a storm sewer. There's actually a really thin lot back here. It would be to acquire either the city or MSD to acquire this lot, and to put a storm sewer with inlets back here, and add a detention basin down at 1225 O'Day Avenue. So currently 1225 O'Day Avenue is vacant, and so our other part of the recommendation is to acquire both this lot and the thin lot in between Oakleaf and O'Day, because the 1225 O'Day Avenue should not, it's currently kind of serving as a natural detention area. There are some sinkholes in there. Water kind of naturally collects on this lot already, and so our recommendation is to kind of you continue to use that. And so it would be construction of approximately 520 linear feet of 15-inch diameter storm sewer. And the acquisition of, like I said, those 2 parcels would be required, and the project would impact 21 properties and benefit 10 properties. And the total cost of this project would be $812,000. Oh, and before I move on, let me go into a little bit more detail about what we're looking at. So each project has its own exhibit. So it has a kind of a picture of what our recommended work is, kind of outlining the recommended work with a key over here. So this symbol, this square, is showing a recommended inlet. And the blue shows the detention basin. You can see the parcels and the addresses and the street names. The red sewers on that you can see are the sanitary sewers, and those are just they're just so we know kind of where they are. They're not part of the storm sewer system. The blue sewers are part of the storm sewer system and are shown. Those are existing storm sewer and are shown on the exhibit. The green parcels are the parcels that we visited out in the field. And this map right here on the left side shows the purple line shows the outline of the city of Rock Hill. The red polygons show the areas where we have recommended projects. This black circle with the yellow kind of highlighting area shows you where in the city we're looking at with this snip right here. The project name and then the project number are up at the top. I do want to emphasize that these projects are shown in no particular order right now. These are the project numbers are arbitrarily assigned. They are just so we have a way of MSD always has project numbers assigned with projects, and that's kind of the standard way of doing it, just to help identify a project and keep everything together. So like I said, the project numbers are not indicative of how important a project is, and these projects are being presented in no particular order tonight. And then another part of what you were looking at is the cost estimate that we came up with. So it's each pay item. So inlets, the 15-inch storm sewer, the flared end section, so the outlet right here, any excavation, rehabilitation work, the sodding. So this green outline shows just sodding that would need to be put back after excavating and putting the sewer in. The riprap, like I said, that's just rock. So in this, it can be used to help stabilize creek banks. In this case, it's used as kind of outlet control, so that when water goes into this detention basin, just to help with erosion. Mobilization is just for the contractor. Protection and restoration includes things like what's not included at this level, because we're pretty high level. We're just at a conceptual project level at this point. Things like the fences and other things that would likely need to be either removed and replaced, or just other things that would need to be either protected or restored as part of construction. And then in the case of this exhibit, we have the acquisition of those 2 parcels included as well. So with this second project, Frederick Court Storm Sewer Extension. So the problem that they're experiencing here is water is flowing down from Litzinger and from the west, and flowing, and there's a flow path that kind of comes down. Water is collecting in these backyards of these houses, kind of on the north side of Frederick Court here, and flowing through these backyards. And so our recommendation is to actually use the existing easement that's there for the sanitary sewer and put in a storm sewer in there as well, to help collect and divert the flow into the storm sewer system. And similarly, on the other part of Frederick Court up here, They do have some flow coming down and flowing into some of these like garages and houses. So it would be to collect the stormwater coming down and just connect into the existing storm sewer system. So this would be constructing approximately 600 linear feet of 12-inch diameter storm sewer. With this, if we use existing easements, no easements would be required, and would benefit 6 properties and a total cost of $176,000. The third project, Old Warson Storm Sewer and Storage. So they do experience some roadway flooding, and there aren't really storm sewers between Old Warson and down quite a bit of McKinley and then up Old Warson. And a lot of the stormwater is collecting at 1359 McKinley Avenue here and flowing onto the roadway. So our recommendation is to extend the storm sewer up further to collect and convey the stormwater, as well as incorporating some underground storage. So this purple kind of crisscross box, it is just a symbol indicating the underground detention that I was showing earlier. So it would involve excavation but then covering up so you don't even really know it's there, of some detention. And initially, this is identified as a little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to discuss the MSD projects that are in this area. This was originally identified as an MSD project, but we have modified their conceptual design by incorporating some underground storage to help attenuate flow. And by doing so, we can connect into the existing storm sewer down here that is adequately sized. Their original plan actually went all the way across Rock Hill Road with a larger sewer connecting directly into Deer Creek. And this would be to construct approximately 930 linear feet of 15-inch diameter storm sewer. And this would benefit 5 properties. And the total cost associated with this is $587,000. The next project, Brownburt Avenue Storm Sewer Extension. And with this, they have water coming down from kind of the areas just north of Brownburt and flowing through these backyards. And just off the page, you can't see it. This is where Rock Hill Creek is back there. And it is kind of a concrete channel back at that point. But water is flowing through these backyards, and our recommendation is to actually collect the flow coming down and divert the flow in connecting to the storm sewer. It will still eventually go into the creek back there where the storm sewer connects, but it's less disruptive and causing less damage that way than by a channel flowing through these backyards. And that would involve 200 linear feet of 18-inch diameter storm sewer, and it benefit 4 properties with a cost of $101,000. Remington Lane stormwater storage. With this project is one of those instances I was discussing earlier that there is a network of storm sewers that ends at a sinkhole. So this storm sewer system looks like it just ends here. There's actually a sinkhole located here. And so the water is collected in these inlets and conveyed in the storm sewers and channel into a sinkhole. However, when there's a larger rain, that sinkhole is inadequate to collect all of that stormwater and immediately put it in the ground. And so we need a solution to help attenuate that. And so our recommendation is to add a couple of rain gardens for that immediate overflow of the sinkhole, but also to help attenuate the flow upstream. So just for like a larger rain event, like a really big storm event, to store flow up further upstream in the system temporarily, and then slowly release it back into the storm sewer system where it can more gradually infiltrate into the sinkhole. This would benefit 2 properties and has a total cost of $176,000. Along De Pere, we have a few different projects. So this is the first one, the North De Pere Avenue stream bank stabilization. There was a photo I showed earlier. So there's a wall falling, water is cutting over and cutting back behind it. And our recommendation is to just cut the whole creek bank back at like a 3-to-1 slope and stabilize it with the more traditional method of creek bank stabilization, which, like I said, is to cut the creek bank back so it's less vertical. It has a little bit more slope to it, and stabilize it with rock lining. So that's different size rocks. They kind of, fit together, and that rock is sized based on the velocity of the water flowing through there. You also have biostabilization, which can mean a few different things. It can mean native plants, like willow staking, so like live staking of trees or plants that will eventually become trees, and as their roots grow, it helps stabilize the creek bank. And this would be to stabilize 115 linear feet of creek bank and benefit 1 property for a total of $80,000. And I do see there's a question asking if Rock Hill is paying 50% of these total costs. So right now, none of these projects, these are all conceptual projects. Rock Hill is not paying for any of them at this point. In the future, if Rock Hill is able to incorporate any of these into their budget, they may, or this will be presented to MSD to incorporate those into the list of MSD's projects. So at this time, none of these is going to be constructed in the near future. We have to find the funding first. And so what Laura was saying about the OMC, might be a little bit of confusion on that OMCI funding. So I can let her answer that a little bit later. We can talk about that a little bit more as well. The next area would be South De Pere Avenue or South De Pere Creek Bank Stabilization. So there is a wall that is falling into the creek right here, and the creek bank gets pretty close to this garage structure as it comes up. So there are gabions on the north. Gabion baskets are those wire baskets that have rock inside of them. They're used to help stabilize creek banks. And there are some on the north side of this creek bank and a little bit on the south, and they stop. So one of our ideas for this area is to build up about 6 feet of gabion baskets to match with the existing and tie into those. And then for the additional, it's about a 12-foot high creek bank here. The additional 12 feet, cut that back at a 3-to-1 slope and do the rock lining and biostabilization along that kind of top part of the bank. There's not room with the garage that's built close to the creek bank to do the traditional cutting the creek bank all the way back to stabilize it. This is a slightly alternative. MSD does have this identified to build a concrete wall here. And so that is what MSD's original idea was. And so we came up with a slightly different alternative, which is why it's being presented today. This would impact or benefit 1 property and has a cost of $176,000. So now I'm going to go over actually 3 different alternatives we have for this middle part along De Pere Avenue. And so this first option is the least costly. kind of maybe least helpful of the options, but is certainly a viable option that was considered, and that is to stabilize the creek bank, stabilize about 500 linear feet of creek bank. And this is exactly what I have explained earlier with kind of cutting the creek bank back, putting the rock lining and like native plantings and biostabilization, the live staking and other things to help stabilize the creek bank through here. So that is one option. It does have a total cost of about $217,000. It would benefit these 8 properties through here. The next idea we had for this area is a lot more invasive, but has higher potential of really solving some of the issues occurring here, such as flooding. And that would be to actually move the center line of the creek. So this, I know it's kind of a lot going on in this exhibit, but it would, there's this light blue line, and that would be our new center line of the creek. So we would actually, it would involve a fairly significant amount of excavation to basically dig a new route for the creek, and then fill in where the existing creek is. Would involve quite a bit of permitting with the Department of Natural Resources and FEMA, and but it would shift the creek further away from the houses and create a buffer zone between the houses and the creek for when any flood issues do occur. It would also involve some creek bank stabilization, biostabilization, and would benefit 12 properties. And the city does own the lots behind it where we would shift the creek to. So that is definitely a benefit of already owning those properties. However, this does have a higher price tag at $878,000. And the last option, probably the least feasible because it is the most expensive, would be a buyout option. And that would be getting FEMA involved and actually buying out these 6 parcels at about $1.7 million. We just took a look at this to see, what the total cost would be. We did get the property values off the St. Louis County Revenue website to come up with this total cost. And I think the other 2 options are probably more feasible and less costly. However, this certainly was something that we took a look at. The next area that has a few different option considerations is the industrial Rock Hill Industrial Court off of Manchester Road. There is some creek bank, there's some creek bank erosion eroding towards these industrial properties back here. They do experience some significant flooding. This whole area is built in the floodway. So that's absolutely not a surprise that they're experiencing some flooding. And creek bank erosion back here. So a couple of these properties have tried to do a little bit of stabilization on their own because the creek is encroaching closer and closer to their buildings. However, this would be an engineered creek bank stabilization solution and be a long area at about 1,200 linear feet of creek bank that would need to be stabilized, and therefore a little bit more expensive than some of the other creek bank stabilization projects I've discussed tonight at $832,000. Another option for the industrial court, this would really be for the flooding issue. It wouldn't resolve the creek bank stabilization, so it might need to be in conjunction with that creek bank stabilization project. And that would be to do some sort of industrial wet flood proofing. So, dry flood proofing. So there are a few different technologies that the area here could incorporate. So the idea that we've come up with for this exhibit is to actually build kind of a passive flood wall system. And to build it, you know, kind of along the buildings, protecting them. Now, passive flood proofing always stays in place. An active one you have to actually like put up when you know it's going to flood. And in the Midwest here, most of our flooding that's occurring is flash flooding. So we don't get very much warning if a flood is going to occur. So any flood proofing system that would be considered would really need to be a passive system. There are other different things that can be considered. There are different doors, like garage doors and other things that can be installed in industrial buildings to help the flooding in the building. So this is something that more than likely is going to be a continuing conversation between the city and the owners of these properties back here, and the best way to handle the flooding that's occurring back there. So with just this one example of the flood planks, the total cost is about $4.9 million. And similarly, the last option that was considered is a buyout option. So actually acquiring these parcels, tearing the building down, returning it to just the land to the floodplain. However, just due to the cost of about almost $10 million, this is really not likely a feasible option. But again, we just wanted to take a look and see how this compared to the other options when coming up with our project ideas. Now, there were a few areas. So this exhibit shows MSD's projects in this area. So they're conceptual projects in the area. So there are a few projects that I did discuss tonight because we had some alternative solutions to what MSD has come up with. So an example is Old Worsen storm sewer, as I explained, by incorporating detention. We were able to shorten what their conceptual plan was for the storm sewer. And then for what we called the South DePere Avenue Creek Bank stabilization, their idea was just to do a concrete wall, and we came up with an alternative solution. And so that's why we did come up with exhibits for those. But these are all projects that are currently in MSD's system. They're just not funded. There's just not enough money to do all the storm water work throughout MSD's jurisdiction that they want to do. And similarly, with the project discussed tonight, that's a lot of these projects were very expensive. We will likely need to, as Laura discussed earlier, find funding to complete some of these, and or see if MSD is able to complete any of the projects if they similarly are able to get some funding. Another few non-capital improvement projects. One would be is a recommendation from us, a stormwater ordinance. So one thing we did notice, there's a lot of areas that include floodplain and floodway where there are buildings built in those areas or very close to those areas. And so incorporating stormwater ordinances that establish buffer zones for any new construction. This wouldn't apply to existing properties, but for new construction, just making sure that we're not building buildings in areas that we know are going to flood, or are very close to areas that are going to flood, or are right next to the creek bank. And another one is the MS4 minimum control measures. Rock Hill is a co-permittee with MSD on their stormwater permit, and that's what the MS4 permit is. And they do ask that minimum control measures are met as part of that. So public education and outreach, just what we're doing right now, you guys as the public are participating and learning about stormwater issues in your area, containing stormwater on construction sites, good housekeeping in municipal operations, like keeping inlets free and clear of debris. So right now there's a lot of leaves that are falling from the trees and potentially clogging and blocking inlets, and just making sure that those are cleared away so that your inlets can function properly, and water can get into the inlets and into the storm sewer system and not flood your roadway, your property, backyard, whatever. And most of the projects I discussed tonight were long-term, so more expensive. They will likely require a design component and are going to be just more expensive to complete. The shorter term projects are more maintenance related. Smaller projects like removing and replacing of an inlet, as an example, are just generally easier to complete and don't require a lot of design. And with that, we can do questions, and I will have our contact information up here. It's also included in the letter that you likely received in the mail, and the letter is also posted on the City of Rockville website. Those contain Laura and my contact information, email address, and phone number. And this meeting is being recorded and will be available. The link to watch it will be available on the city website here shortly. If not tomorrow, then very soon in the next week or so. And with that, Laura, are there any questions?
So Alison, there were 6 questions. I did provide answers as you were moving along, so you can go through them. I think there's only one more that's open.
Yes, the images will be available in the online presentation.
There is one more question that's open about recommendations for 341.
Projects? Yes, I see that question, and that's pertaining to a specific property. So I will contact that property owner directly. And Richmond Avenue. There are a few more questions that have come up that are specific to an individual property. So how we plan to answer those is we will follow up with you individually. And with that, I think we are done. Are projects that affect more properties rather than a few more likely to be done? Yes. I know I presented a few projects tonight that if only affected like 1 or 2 properties. I will say those are less likely to be done. Properties that affect, or projects that affect more properties are more likely to be done, and that is also taken into consideration with the benefit cost ratio. So if a project is for example, not a high cost project and will benefit a lot of properties, it's certainly more likely to be done than a more expensive project that only impacts 1 property. How long after the final report is given will Lockmuir help the city explore funding options? Pretty much immediately after. We will present to MSD and see how they can incorporate any of these projects into their list of projects, And we will also explore other funding options through the state, as Laura mentioned earlier, SRF and other types of funding. Occasionally there is ARPA funding that's available as well that happened last summer. So there's different avenues for exploring funding, and pretty much immediately after completing the Stormwater Master Plan, we will start looking at options. And the final Stormwater Master Plan is due to be completed in January 2024. Okay, I think that's it with the questions.
Thanks, Alison.
Thank you, everyone.
And thanks, everyone, for joining.